could you please first start out by stating your name and today's date?
My name is Willena Cannon. Today is October the 9th, 2019.
And Miss Willena, do you mind telling me what your profession is?
Oh my God. I've actually worked a lot with housing. I've worked a lot with counseling, with neighborhood youth corps, drug addiction. So I guess it's all of those things.
Yes, ma'am. And Miss Willena, where are you from, and could you tell me a little bit about it?
I came from a very small town in South Carolina. It was so small, I think we had about 4 lights, 4 cops, 7,000 people, dogs and cats, everything included. It's a very small farming town. Probably 35 minutes from Myrtle Beach. So it was kind of towards the coast.
Okay. What prompted your move to Greensboro?
To go a student, A&T.
And what did you major in while you were at A&T?
Actually, I came here to major in psychology. And like today, students try to investigate what universities offer. We didn't do that then. So when I came here, not only did A&T didn't have a major in psychology, they didn't have a minor, just some classes. So I'm here, already in school. I figured out, what am I going to do? And I said, well, I was the captain of the girls basketball team for 2 years, and we won the state championship for 3 years straight. Maybe I go in physical education, only to find out it was health and physical education. The health part with kinesiology and all those courses had me up a lot of mornings. Because later I found out that physical education, health and physical education major, once they completed it, 9 credit hours from pre-med students. So that was more than I bargained for. It was more than sports, but I got through it.
Well, first I want to say I congratulate you on that for getting your degree. Question, with you attending at HBCU during that time period, what was life like for you?
Actually, the school was stricter than it is today. We couldn't go off campus, and when you did, you had to have maybe 10 other students with a dorm counselor. Each dormitory had a senior person, and they had a dorm matron in there, so all of that was different. And places that you couldn't go to eat, like for instance, when we got here in '61, Woodworth, you could go to that, but that was about the only place. They had a K&W downtown on Davie and Market Street that A&T students had to go behind the building where the garbage cans and order something through the windows and walk down the street and eat it. So later in '63, we fixed that, but that's what it was like when I got here. And the food wasn't the greatest at A&T. Well, I think none of the colleges, and the racial thing was the same thing that I left at home, which even as a child, I had a distaste for and not know what it was about. Actually, I had the wrong idea. I thought the reason the racist stuff and the problem was white people, which made me hate all white people, or at least that was my perception. And so that's what I came for, to all-black school, and went to an all-black school. We didn't have the integration we have now. So that's where I landed. So when A&T started, I think in 1963, Jesse Jackson was the president of the student body. That body said, hey, let's finish the job. They did Woodworth, let's finish. So we aimed at KNW and Carolina Theater. So that was great. If you can imagine, A&T students' body was a little over 5,000. You got to imagine all the students was in jail, but 49. A lot of A&T students don't even know that. They knew about 60, and they know about 69 when they shot up Scott Hall. But can you imagine the whole student body? And I had a brother here, was a year younger than me in a class. He was one of the 49s that didn't go. And we had one class together, a psychology class together. The professor gave me his grade, which was A+, and I was busy courting at that time. I had a C+. Gave him the C+ and gave me an A+, and asked him why weren't they in jail with their classmates. But it was a good thing, because actually the community came together, the churches. They got money together and they put catering service wherever we were. I was in an old polio home that they had closed down and didn't need anymore. And about me and 200 other students was there. They had some at the county farm. I think they had some in Gibsonville. I know they had in High Point, because that's where I went the first day I was arrested. They took us to High Point, and then they brought me back to Greensboro the next day. But we had students all over. And then they tried to get us out of jail, and we refused. I know out to the building, the whole old polio home, they pulled us out, and I remember crawling back through the police legs. We didn't want to leave until they integrated those places. And they finally, I think after 2 weeks, they did. Oh, Dowdy got a letter from the state telling him to write a letter to all the students, wherever they were in jail, and say, if you don't come out of jail, you will be expelled from A&T and you never could come back. So we said, oh, Dowdy's with us. The state just got him saying that. So nobody moved, nobody got put out. And they finally relent to serving. I remember when the buses brought us back, we made the buses take us down to Davie and Market. And we went through the line. They were ready to serve us. Nobody had money. We didn't have money like students have today. So we said, well, now we have to go figure out how to get money so we can come back down and deal. But it was a great victory that and it really, it relieved some of the years of the racism that had worked on me. It was like something is happening. So I felt really great, to the point that I went home Thanksgiving and forgot that the Dairy Queen was a place where white students gathered, had a flat top, a DJ on top that played music. So if you were black, you just drove up there, the curb hop would come and you give your order and you leave. While they sit there, some of them could go in and sit in their cars. This is whites. Blacks could not go in there. Okay, now to be honest, my mother asked, I was going out with my brother and his girlfriend, and my mother asked us to get her a milkshake before we go. So when we got there, I wanted her to get it. I honestly forgot that you wasn't supposed to go in there. So I ran in there. And oh my God, realization hit me really hard. Oh goodness, I'm not walking out of here with my tail between my legs after all that fighting in Greensboro. So I asked, are you gonna wait on me? They looked at me and said nothing. Meanwhile, the music stopped, and we sit there. So I got really brazen. I went to the phone, dropped a dime in it, that's what it was then, and called the police. They recognized that I was black. They told me they didn't have nothing to do with that man's place and I needed to get out of there. So, hung up. Sit down, and to have something to do, in my purse I had a little booklet that you take notes in class. I started writing my sister a letter of what was happening, knowing I wasn't going to mail it, but it gave me something to do while I'm sitting there waiting. Meanwhile, these cars on the outside, circling the building, riding around and round and round. So I said, God, I know what the pilgrims must have felt like when the ending was. But I sit there and kept on writing. It gave me something to do. Then they called the police. I looked around. 2 policemen, highway patrolmen. They walked behind me, went back to the kitchen, and I could hear some of the things, not much. It was just a, no, we can't do that. No, she must be planted. It's that Martin thing. So I'm hearing pieces. And later, I'm here to tell you today, the reason why I'm here to talk to you is because they thought I was a planter with Martin Luther King. What they did with so-called big niggers like me, big pants or whatever, with a big idea, they take you in a swamp and drop you in water and then people would be scared to ask about you. My grandmother whispered all the time and I didn't know why. And if somebody like that was lost, you didn't go around asking questions because you got lost. So that's what would have happened had they not believed that I was planted. And I told you how it happened. It was a spur of a moment. So the cops left. They never said nothing to me. And when they left, all these people that circling around, they left. The DJ came down. So what was left there was the people that worked there, me, the DJ. I looked around, my brother was gone. He drove up. And a little car hop came in and said, that man wanted to talk to you. I went to the door. He went 2 blocks away at the gas station. He said, are you crazy? They're going to hang you. You better get away from here. So I still got my little pride. I stick my foot in the door, lean in, and said, okay, I'm leaving now, but I'll be back here tomorrow, and maybe you will decide to serve me then. And I walk out and get in the car. As far as I'm concerned, that's it. I left there with my little dignity, and that was over with. Okay, that was on a Friday night. Came through that Saturday. On the way home, I had passed by the Dairy King all the time. The place was dark and closed down on a Saturday night. Wait a minute. Oh, so they think I'm coming back. So then I run and tell some of the people that I graduated from what had happened. So we was talking about, they felt this, they were scared, some of them, but saying, hey, let's see what happened. Let's watch it and see what happened. So the next night, like they did in the past, they sent this black preacher to my house. And we was raised that you always respect whatever they say and listen to them, so you couldn't disrespect them. So this preacher started talking to me about Cain and Abel and how the blacks was cursed. None which I wanted to hear, but had to dutifully, respectfully listen to him. And on he went, and then finally he left. So I ran to see if people was riding by there to see if it was open. When I got there, my friends was inside. They were serving them. They decided. So I was home. I didn't have nothing to do with that part. They were being served and everything. So my mother asked me to leave early. I left there Thanksgiving Day because they were so nervous. And they had a right to be, because I was safe back at A&T, but my family was there, and they did the retaliation. But at that time, this was past 63, and Martin Luther King was really busy with all of that. So they looked at this as a part of that. And they didn't bother my family or me, but that would have been wiped out real quick. I would have been an example to anybody else who got big-headed and thought like that. So that's the way they dealt with stuff.
First, I just want to say, I want to tell you I'm proud of you, and I'm sure you heard that throughout your life, but you being as strong as you have been, I'm going to get teary-eyed interviewing you, made it so that we're able to do stuff like this. So thank you.
Okay. But it was really the circumstances that pushed you. And I guess from here and the struggle with A&T, I didn't have sense enough to be scared there. So I gave you that background so you could see why I end up with this. Because another incident before I went to school, I was 9 years old, and I guess you saw that in the book, where black man was going with a white woman. And that happened a lot there, but once they got exposed, the white woman would holler she was raped and all of that kind of stuff, and the black man would disappear, and nobody would talk about it. On this occasion, this woman didn't. She did not, they caught them together. She did not holler rape. She was in love with this black man. And when I saw her, she had blood all over this, and I don't know what happened to her to this day, but I know they was beating her with rocks and all that kind of stuff. The black man, it haunted me all of my teenage lives, and actually didn't know till I came to A&T and actually cried out one night. But they put him in an old barn that was falling down. So it wasn't a barn that they used at that time. They needed to get rid of it. They put him in and locked the doors and fixed it where he couldn't get out of there and set it afire. And I could hear him holler and pierce and scream, and then silence. And the barn burned down. And the sheriff came out there and said that wasn't his business, and he left. Didn't stop nothing. People couldn't do nothing. So this is rage in me that I couldn't do nothing with. So any of them times, like going into here, going to stand in front of K&W, that was feeding that. To deal with the Dairy Queen, that was feeding that. So actually, before November 3rd, we met in China Grove and confronted the clans. I guess you heard about that. And they were there backed up with guns and all of that, but from the demonstrators. So that fed that. It was kind of like this whole getting back at what they did to this man in my mind. So stuff like that can give you courage. It keep you from being frightened, or you don't have sense enough to be frightened. Either way you want to look at it. It felt like I was getting back at them. I wasn't afraid of them at all, and they looked like they were frightened of the people, which I've heard later the FBI used to taunt them with how we backed them up in them. So when I came to A&T, one night I scared my roommates out of their loving mind. I was screaming 3 o'clock in the morning, bloody murder. I relived that situation with the barn. But that was the only time. So I think once I got busy fighting back, that got lost. Or I didn't have another episode. So that's what I bring that to know. Wanted to struggle, actually, after A&T experience, I got married, had a child, went to Charleston, started working. But I kind of kept in what was going on at A&T. So I heard about this person, Nelson Johnson, at A&T, was vice president of the student body, and stuff they were doing. The A&T students were still fighting and struggling to hold and filling up the student body, the city council to help matters in Greensboro. If the citizens were doing, trying to get something done, they would help go down and support that struggle. So I kept up with that, and then finally came back to Greensboro and started working with Neighborhood Youth Corps as a counselor, and found out about the Poor People's Organization with Nelson Johnson, and also had Malcolm X University with Howard Fuller. So I got involved with that. That was like something I could do with it. The Poor People's Organization, first they had a story hour for children and a garden, so that gave me an opportunity to deal with my son with that. Meanwhile, I went through a divorce. My husband became an alcoholic and went to D.C. I was here. So I got involved with the struggle with that. And although I worked with poverty programs, I dealt with Neighborhood Youth Corps, left there for Drug Action Council. Those programs allowed me to work in the community after work. I would go do community organizing after I was, if I was working with Neighborhood Youth Corps. A lot of my clients came from those communities that I was working in. And most of them was housing projects, like Ray Wine, Claremont, Warnersville, any of them. I was known because I was working in them. From Neighborhood Youth Corps, visit my clients, but also organizing for whatever that was going on in the community. And a lot of, so during that time, we formed something called Revolutionary League. And we got a lot of youth involved. I was running the youth part for a while. And that was working wonderful to me. It was all black. So how did I get to November 3rd with a mixed group? During this time, we got really involved with the struggle in Africa. The, what would you call it? At that time, a lot of companies was investing in the apartheid, and Malcolm X University was sending people over there to South Africa with the idea to help fight. And Mandela and them crowd, the ANC, said, we got enough fighters. You in the belly of the beast, that you need to work with that. So when we did African Liberation Day every year, the first year we did that, we organized black people to go to D.C. 75,000, and now that don't mean nothing, but that was like 5 million today. All these people going there, fighting for Africa, when we were told that they were people you don't deal with, they're savages, all of that stuff you're coming off of. So we were standing up with them. And I need to say Mike Nathan, one of the people that was killed, gathered a lot of, he was a doctor, medical doctor. He gathered a lot of medical supplies and shipped them every year. He got doctors all over the country to give supplies, and they would mail them to that. So that, okay, so doing that, we were doing a lot of the really coming to together with Africa and what it means to be from Africa and ancestors, all of that. To the point I named, all of my children have African names, Kwame, Kweli, and Imani. And so we were involved in that period with all of that. So Then come Nelson talking about this white group in Chapel Hill that wanted to work with us. Oh no, you can't trust white people. They come in to invade this, to stop this, to turn it around, to take it over. That was my view. And I didn't want no part of it. And I got voted down. So my thing is I'm coming in there anyway and be able to pull them out when they see what's happening and keep my eyes on what's happening. And people met, we studied, we talked about what really was happening, studied the class system. That was the first eye-opener for me. Then we talked some about the Underground Railroad. So there was white people involved in freeing slaves and all of that. So you begin to see. And then there were some black people in the country who had made it that act like they weren't black no more. So this class system was answering all of that for me. And then I began to see people sacrifice that didn't have to. These medical doctors, they didn't have to deal with any of that. So I become this and hey, and learning. And that's one phase of my life I never will regret. It was learning who the enemy, what this whole system was about, the slave trade, all of that. So therefore I didn't have to pass on to my children the hatred of another race, misinformation, and not see who your allies and all of that. So not only that, to me, CWP was the closest to a Christian organization as you want to get. People cared about one another. We learned how to criticize people without criticizing your essence, but a deed that you have from this culture that you needed to get rid of because it could hurt the struggle. So you wanted to get rid of that. So you learned how to deal with that. And people had your back. They proved that from how they dealt. It was, today, a lot of those people are still my friends. I will have Sally and Paul. They come and stay with me about every year. We go to the beach. People that did that kind of work, November 3rd, still doing it. Some of them are doctors, lawyers, but wherever they are, all over this country, is still doing that kind of work. And you'll hear some of that during the 40th anniversary. So that was what brought me there that day. And you knew instinctively once you were there, it was really weird because there was no police there. This was in Morningside, one of the places in Greensboro that's never without a cop. Even 3 o'clock, 4 in the mornings, always police there because it was a place too packed with people, and you get people tied up. There's always how they mishandle things, and sometimes needed the police, and the police a lot of times started stuff with people in there. But anyway, getting back to CWP. The people that you see was killed was doing great work with the labor movement. It wasn't about the Klans, it was the labor movement. And this is in the early 70s, that you could see poor white people who was still, this culture was still telling me, you better than blacks no matter what you don't have. Meeting in the kitchen and or the houses of poor blacks, and vice versa. That just didn't happen back then. But they were, the comrades was teaching them the system too, the class system, and how they take you, white person, give you 5 cents more than the black person, but they're exploiting both of you. And how maybe you can get $2 more if you come together and fight them. And then they taught them, they had a union, And most of the time, the union was a joke because it was somebody the company put in there to work for the company. So these comrades, Jim Waller, worked to be the president of the union. He got in there. They fired him because they found out he lied. He never did. Well, he didn't lie. He didn't write down that he was a doctor, a medical doctor. He was a pediatrician. And that was another thing convinced me that people wanted to help. Because here's this doctor, a successful pediatrician. He couldn't take no more clients. He had that many. And he chose to leave that to come struggle. And I asked him about that one day, and he said, he looked at it this way, that he had an office, as a doctor's office, but on the way there was a hole, and people coming fell in the hole and broke their leg, or stepped in the hole and broke their leg, and had to come to him to have it fixed. So he looked, leaving his office, going to work to fix the hole so people wouldn't have the broken leg. So that's how he explained to me why he left and got involved in that. And you have to admire that even today. So this is the learning period for me. But they were so successful. If Cone Mills would show you their records, you could look at the accidents and the way they went down. You could tell that they were in there then. And then after the killings, you can see where the accidents went up. Actually, a brother from Africa was caught in one of those things that usually grab your arm and snatch it off. He was caught up in it, and it squeezed him to death. They had that in the paper. That would have never happened if those people been in there. And instead of Cone Mills wanting to take the money to make it safe, they wanted so greedy to make all the profits that they put less than they could to make people safe. And they wanted these people out of the way, out of there, because the union was successful. And this system, police, they help sometimes, because I got a niece that's a policeman, and I know all of them are not bad. But the way the system is set up is to protect the Cones and people like that. And we know that. I'm not saying the Cones did that, but I will say this on camera. Who benefited from their death more than Cannon Mills, because that's where Sandy was working, Cone Mills, that's where Bill and Jim was working. Cecil was working with the Duke, I believe it was the cafeteria workers or the housekeepers over in Durham. He graduated cum laude. He was a Hispanic, so the party had every race of people in the United States in it. I've gone to meetings in New York, slept on the floor with Chinese I'd never seen before, but comfortable. We talked about work and all what we was doing. It was wonderful. It was really wonderful to know people all over the country that you can go to their houses, meet. We're doing the same thing. So that's a part of my life I will cherish forever. So some people say, well, you're sorry you was in the Communist Party. I've learned since then communism is not the way. Neither is capitalism. You see what it's doing today, and it gets worse and all of that. So I want to put that, but that whole organization, I was a part of it, and I was happy to be with that. And after these killings, right here you can see where they was trying. Actually, they didn't put the picture. They were actually choked. They were trying to break his neck. And I knew they would do that and could get away with it and said he was acting all wild and he was all, and he got hurt through the struggle. They were good for that, and they would have gotten away with that. So my thing was, you don't see it, but there was a lot of black men around. They didn't like what they seen, but they weren't moving, but they were fussing, but they weren't doing anything. So I knew I had to do something to get them moving. So my thing is, I'm going to jump in there and try to help Nelson. They're going to stop me, and they're going to handle me wrong. Those black guys then started getting involved, and then they had to let him go. And that back the people, the guys who were going to make a big mess and get involved and have a whole thing, that they stopped it. At least they stopped with him, and they arrested both of us. And I asked them on the way there, why you arrest me? The police said, well, we'll think of something. We'll know something by the time we get you there. And then they was talking. One of them was a white female policeman in a black, the car I was in. And she would start talking about how some of the children gotten killed. I seen Jim. I seen all the 5 that before I got arrested. But Sandy, I didn't see. Sandy was behind the building, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Dead behind the building. So I didn't see any children, but she started talking about some children got killed. Now mine is there. My oldest was there. My sister had my 2 youngest ones. So I didn't know so I'm feeling stressed now, not knowing this. On the way to jail, can't find out. So they didn't take me to jail. They took me to the city hall down in a basement. And I knew it was FBI. Came in. They asked me what was my name, the whole mess they go through. I said, don't ask me that. You know what my name is. Then they started asking, well, do you know who did this? So I said, what are you asking me for? You know who did this. You helped them. So then something said, don't talk to them. You shouldn't. They got you talking. So they started asking all kind of questions, and I wouldn't ask, but I was so scared that they would prompt me to ask. I started thinking about my childhood, the Klan, the stuff that happened. So I could hear them talking, but I wouldn't even focus on what they were saying. And the next thing I knew, I don't know what happened. I knew I was stressed about the children. But then I lift my head up. There was a clock in there. It was 5 o'clock. So I blacked out. Didn't know it. I was thinking, and then I lift my head up and saw the time, and I saw a mirror, a glass that flashed. So I knew it was a 2-way mirror. So since I sit up, they came in, and they said, we're going to let you go. So they did. Then I tried to find out where was folks, and then I found out I knew all who was killed, but Sandy was also. What we found out later, when you got people shooting in a crowd like that, nobody, all them community people was there, none of them got hurt. None. It was only CWP people. They had a list who to be killed. And it's like if you're a Klansman, you got a picture of Sandy. So you see Sandy, you watch to where you can get. She ran behind the building with some children. That's what Sandy did. So she peeked to see what was going on. Just ahead, they shot her right through the eyes. So if you're watching where she go and she peeped, then you shoot. And that's what they did. They did that with every last one of these people that was killed was leading the struggle and making great strides with black and white labor organizers and hooking up with them. So, and during that time, the labor organizing was still going on from where. So we was trying to hook up with all of that, and this was going on. So this was a dangerous piece of work. They had to do something, and that's what they did. And they used, people says, and I want this to be clear, it was a struggle between the Klans and the communists. That is not true. It was a labor movement, And if you look at it from slavery, they used the clans to do it. Before slavery was supposed to be abolished, they did it themselves. They just hung you. But then after that, it's supposed to be so-called free, they used the clans to do the dirty work. So that day, I want this to be clear, we wanted to have a conference on the labor movement. And during that time, the clans started popping up again. Even they had one clan in a field, and the news media was showing that like a big thing. So they was getting media, and you didn't have to do a lot of stuff. Just show a burning a cross, and so people were saying, what's happening with this stuff? Because when I was working in the community, why are these people coming up with this clan stuff again? So the labor organizing was really rising and moving really good. We needed to have a conference to talk about the labor movement work and how the clans was fitting into that. So we passed out leaflets to these different communities all over for the whole weeks leading up to November 3rd to the conference. And we plan to start it with Morningside. Morningside is here. Come down Lee Street, go into Ray 1 over here. You have this moving stage, which is like a flatbed, and you got music on it, loudspeaker talking about it, and doing chants and all that going through, so people will follow it and remember it. So we're leaving out of there, coming through Ray 1, leaving Ray 1, going through Hampton Homes, then going through Smith Homes, and right on the other side of Smith Home was the site of the conference. So you going through these places, dragging people with you, reminding people, because you didn't lifted that, but sometimes people forget on Saturday mornings. So that was the whole reason to go through those and then have the conference start at 12:30 or 1 o'clock. But the clans met us at the starting point, and that's where the shooting started.
So let me ask you, I know you just went through and gave us a basic, like where things were, but is there any way you could kind of set us up where it would be today? So I'm from Greensboro, so I know exactly where you're talking about, but for anyone that watches this, it's not, Lee Street is now Gate City Boulevard. Smith Homes is near Freeman Mill Road, which is the major highway, or, try to give context to people so they know where that's at. So although you said they're on the other side of Smith Homes, were they right there by Florida Street area, where Florida Street is now, or further up South Elm Eugene?
You talking about the ending?
Yes, ma'am, where that was.
It was a church that is no longer there.
Okay.
It was on the corner of Freeman Mill Road and Florida Street, right on the other side of that.
Okay.
And it was a small church, which we found out later that we weren't going to be able to use anyway. The FBI visited them 2 days before that, and they didn't know how to tell us. So they took that away. So all of this was the FBI showed them how to do guns. Lewis Pitts, the lawyer, got information to actually show you that. There was footage that the TV got showing the cop, they call him Rooster, his code name, was watching the clans. It was on a house on Random Road, a house that clans was there, cars was there. They took out guns out of that house, put it in the trunk of a car. At that time, and maybe still now, you could carry long guns, but you had to have them displayed on the back. You see people with trucks with the guns crossed. You had to have them like that. They had to be seen. You couldn't hide them. So once the cops saw them put it in the trunk, they had a reason right there to stop the clans and stop that. They watched it. like you said, you didn't know about Morningside. A lot of people here in Greensboro didn't know how to get into Morningside. The way it was, you had to be here. The clans didn't know how to. So Rooster led them right in it to the mouth of it and moved off, and the clans came in and did the dirty work. We never had guns at a rally or a protest when we marched, and we didn't have any then, but the city made sure we didn't have guns. They made Nelson sign a thing, said we wouldn't have guns. And you had a legal right to have them as long as they were showing, but so you can see this whole thing playing with the city involved in it. But the most telling thing was that there were no police there. They met with Nelson. They knew where it was. They had parade permit, which tell you where it is. There's no cops in Greensboro, black or white, didn't know where Morningside was, because they all had been in this at some point. And remember, I was telling you, people lived there. Tell you there has never been no instance, no time that there wasn't 2 or 3 cops there at all times. And during this time, after the shooting was going on, a white female cop came in, not to deal with that. She didn't know anything about that. She came in to deal with a domestic situation. They told her to leave the area. They wouldn't let her deal with that. She had to leave the area. That was just before the shooting or during the shooting, I'm not sure. But they made her get out of there. She had to leave Greensboro. And one of the TV studios got her statement. She had to leave Greensboro. I don't know what happened to her. And Lewis Pitts will know some of that, a little bit more on that. But the fact that they got her out of there, and she didn't know why she was supposed to be going to this fight or a domestic situation, violent, and she had to leave. She left.
This is going to be kind of a two-parter loaded question for you. First, I know we've gone over what happened November 3rd, but could you take us back to the moment right before the shots were fired and all hell broke loose, literally?
Okay, I was not there. Let me explain that. Remember I told you he was coming out of there and coming down Lee Street?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Lee Street, also you come off the highway, straight down Lee Street, right? We had people coming from Chapel Hill, from Raleigh, from Durham, from Orange County, different places, didn't know the starting place because, again, it was too much hard for people who live here. Somebody coming out of town, never been in Greensboro, would never find that. So I'm explaining why I wasn't there. Over here on Windsor Center,
Yes, ma'am.
is right off of, is facing Lee Street. Joyce Johnson, Nelson's wife, and I was told to station there. So when people come in, they had parking there, they could park there, we had a place that people could gather. And when they leave out of Morningside, coming down Lee Street, all of that could join in. All the people coming from wherever, out of town, get off on Lee Street and come down. It's Gate City Boulevard now. But we were there to keep that going till they come. Okay, I had my daughter and my son there. My daughter was supposed to be with my sister. She came to Windsor Center to tell me she came to pick up my daughter. I told her my daughter and my son was in Morningside with the rest of the people. She lived here but didn't know how to get in there. So I leave this situation, go in there, and pick up my daughter, and they see all these people and they just saw a few people at Windsor Center. So they said, this ain't gonna be much. But then they saw all these banners and people gathering, and the flatbed, the moving stage, and all. It was a sight to see. So she said, my husband is right around the corner. Let me go get him and show him this. So we go on the Willow Road, pick up her husband, go back in there. When I go back in there, everything, all hell broke loose. The Klans was running, people were dying. She said, oh, let's get out. I jumped out. She grabbed my daughter. My daughter was with her from the first time. They left me. I went running up to Nelson, and where's that picture? Where? Over there. I joined Nelson over there with him, put Jim's head on his eye. He was still alive. You could see, and then you could see life go out of him. And there had actually some blood on it. I eased his head down and left because to see others and trying to find out what's going on, going to different ones. I saw Bill. So that's why they didn't have the picture with me with him, but we saw Jim die. And then I'm going to different sites seeing people. And then I hear Nelson. He's in this chain thing telling them, he's saying, yeah, they did this. This was a setup. And telling people what happened. There was no policeman here. So they was going on letting them know, the Klans and the police, all of them worked together. And this happened. And so I told you about it. So that's how I came to be on the scene. And it was over with. Actually, I looked down the road when we came in and could saw one or two Klans on the ground. Most of them that did the shooting left, got away. These police was nearby. They weren't a part of the whole. They came in, and of course they stopped the Klans. And at that point, the policeman that was on the deal couldn't release them. You see what I'm saying? The contradiction with the ones that didn't know it and the ones that knew it. So I wasn't there at the shooting. But what I was told, and you will see the 16 minutes, that the Klans came in and people started pointing at the flag, but the lead car came in, and we got a picture where the guy put a gun out and shot. Once he did a shot in the air, people jumped out of the Klans, jumped out of the car, got in his trunk, got the guns, and started looking at people pointing, and they were pointing at certain people. You could see them. They weren't shooting randomly in a crowd. They were pointing, got Jim. So that was happening, and people in that community were saying that. Oh, they were picking at certain people to deal with that. So then the cop came in, and the ambulance, and we was only 2 arrested, and I think 2 or 3 Klans or whatever like that.
As a mother myself, you had mentioned your feelings when that white police officer had told you that some children were killed. What was going through your head in that moment?
All the children, but my son too. I know he was there. My sister had my youngest son and my daughter, but and he's like me, he's not afraid of nothing. So I was thinking of him, but there was so many other children. So it wasn't like just mine. What children? Was it mine? Was it anybody's children? And I think maybe my mind might have drifted back to that, and that might have been why I just fainted or blacked out. Because I don't remember, I don't know how you black out. I just remember thinking, and then the next thing I knew, I lift my head up and saw the time was just stuck. So it was a lot. It was stress. It was stress for my child and other children.
This whole interview, I could not even imagine what you went through.
Yes.
And I said teary-eyed behind the camera here listening to you.
Yes.
One question that I would really love to ask you is, what was the media coverage like following the massacre? because we know how Greensboro and any city for that matter has different demographics, different areas where it's either predominantly black or predominantly white, and sometimes at times they'll report on things in different ways.
Okay. The first day, and I think Nelson and may have it or have pieces of it, the first paper the next morning was massacre. That's what the paper was all the way across that. They said people from Raleigh came down, FBI, whatever, changed it to shootout. So that's what it was, a shootout. Klan and the communists got together. There was two groups that from out of town came to this, chose this place in this black community to have a shootout. There was one person had a pistol shooting in the air. She couldn't even shoot because, I mean, I was raised on a farm. I could shoot. If I'd have been there and had a gun, I could have killed somebody. But we didn't have guns, and they had. But when she shot up in the air, that was the shootout. And with these people, with these high powerful, some of them had made it to a semi-automatic and all of that. So the media put the truth out there. It was changed to be that. The first night, and I forgot her name, she was a black TV personnel. Oh, God. That's what age will do to you. And I may think of her name, but she was very progressive. She took us to the studio and gave where we could tell our stories, some of the stuff I'm telling you now. Some of it we didn't know, we learned later, but talked about it. And she, after that, the media was very biased. It's these communists and the Klansmen coming to fight. The work we was doing, well, none of that was mentioned. That was downplayed. It was just these groups came from out of town. Okay, I came from out of town when I was 18 to go to A&T, but I lived here. All my children was born here. At the time, I owned a house here. So, I mean, I didn't come from out of town. And so it was the media, a lot of people, reporters knew and tried to put stuff that they saw. They saw nobody was there, they saw, and they would tell you, but it got where if you were there as a reporter, you didn't get to talk no more. It's people in your organization they put there who had the line. But it was some reporters, it was hard for them to follow that line when you there and witness it firsthand. But you got a job, so if you couldn't get past that, you got signed to something else. You didn't deal with that.
I'm going to pause real quick and let you know we have 22 minutes on this SD card left. Okay. So then, real quickly, you've told us so much, and we are so appreciative of it. And I think I have a gist of why you got into activism based off of your long history and your experiences. But with activism today, what are your views on it as far as civil rights and the activism within the community today following the massacre? I don't even know if I worded that correctly or not, but
actually, it's coming back. Things had gotten better and not gotten better, but for people, like I talked to you about when I first came to A&T, of course none of that happened now. So the urgent and the thing to fight was not quite there, but people still did things. They still fight police brutality. Once you get into that, you just don't stop with that. So I remember talking to some students at Bennett, and one of the people saying, well, what kind of guarantee we can have that you don't get hurt, that you don't go to jail? Absolutely none. I mean, there's no guarantee to that. And some of them have illusions that things are a certain way, but there's no guarantee. The slavery didn't have no, when they were running away, they had no guarantee to it. We didn't have none, and there's none today. And they will try to stop you any way necessary. Blackball you, take your job. But the students is in a unique way to lead a lot, like I was a student. I didn't understand when I'm standing in the way trying to integrate a place. Why didn't this mother with her children, why didn't she participate? Okay, I understand that now. She had a job. She had 2 children. I didn't have no children. I didn't have no job, didn't study. And if I had a side job, that wasn't like I had nobody depending on me for their life or no. So I understood that. So students are in a unique way to do stuff. And during that time, the student and the community was hooked together. They made sure the FBI, that the A&T now is kind of like a plantation or off from itself away from the community. That wasn't like that then. So that's the difference I see now. But they are students that's active. They're very active. At the time when I was a student, Dowdy had to be a certain way, but we knew he was behind us and with us. That's not so with the president of A&T now. He don't want none of that foolishness, and I know that. He wants. So some of that is happening now, and a lot of that wasn't then. Some of it was then, but it's amazing how students can organize. And let me explain that. This Me Too thing, I was talking to some students up here, and they talking about organizing a rally downtown, 5 o'clock today, and it's 2 o'clock. How they gonna get the leaflets and get people? Social media. I went down there was over 500 people down there. We talking about in hours organizing. So that is a way. What I learned was they call you or text you and told you what was going on, for you to name all your people, send them stuff, have them to send stuff. So the stuff balloon, that's wonderful. That really is wonderful to deal with that. I think it's moving where you're going to see it wide open. And Trump is helping that, and the Republicans. People are scared now. They don't know where this country is going, and they have a right to be, because right now, Trump is being cornered. And I don't want you to think no mean if you got rid of Trump, everything would be okay. He's just a symptom of the thing. It's been there. And the part of the government that's not working is the one that's supposed to check him. Mitch McConnell, that's a dangerous, got us at a dangerous place now. And I would say to white people, and by no means all white people, I'm just talking about the few white people that's behind Trump, especially if they were dealing with Make America White Again. You need to forget that. We don't get up and deal with this situation, Russia will be leading. It's leading Trump now. It will be leading this country. And people say, and I used to too, how did German people let Hitler come to power? How did Russian people let Putin get to where he is now? Guess what? We own that road. We own that road. People halfway scared, how the people going to deal if we impeach? You see this, there's no question about him being wrong and all that. This whole game about process, that's what they want you to get fuzzy and all of that stuff with. This is a time for people to learn. Unfortunately, don't know how the government works. Guess what? People that immigrated here recently, they can tell you how it works, supposed to work. But a lot of people that was born here don't know the three branches of government and how they operate and all of that. So if you don't know that, I mean, ignorance of the system is costly. So I see that. And if we get through this, they should teach that again. How the three branches, I learned that. They don't teach that in high school now, the Congress and the this and how you, I make sure my children know, but a lot of children don't have that. A lot of people don't. They think Trump can do what he want to do. When he said the Second Amendment gave me the right to do anything I want to do, a lot of people believe that. They say, well, he got the Second Amendment. They don't even know what the Second Amendment is. So that's a danger, great opportunity, but danger. And people are seeing that. I was looking at the news this morning. The polls show more people now want this impeachment than ever. The real danger now is that Trump is feeling cornered, and the kind of person he is, a narcissist, will lead him to do something, anything. He does not care whether this country gets hurt by it. If it will take the focus off of him and focus on that. And we could be with a war with Iran. Iraq was bad, and we lost a lot of people with Iraq. But Iran is no Iraq. We will lose a lot. We can beat Iraq. I don't want you to think that we can't put them down, but we will suffer a lot, a whole lot of human lives on both sides, more than we did with Iraq. So this is kind of where we are now. And actually, people was wondering why Pelosi didn't deal quicker. Do you know why?
You play your cards right, and you wait it out. You don't make
Well, the thing that she saw at that point, not now, but earlier, this country was right. A civil war was possible. But Trump has done so much now. People are scared of what he's doing, and with the other countries asking them and all of that. Because some of the Republicans now, 18% said he should be impeached. There was no percent. So people are scared of what he can do. That's the opportunity that you can go ahead, and that's why Nancy started with that. But before, you have a lot of militia with guns stashed a lot of places. That will be with the Republicans. And the Democrats kind of had nothing but the military. But you got a lot of the, like militia, you got a lot of that in the military. So the question was, where would the generals fall to? Right now, with what Trump is doing, the generals would fall with the Democrats. They would fall with the law, and they would put it down. They would put the militia down. So it's safe to go with, I'm sorry. They would put it down, and Nancy Pelosi see that, and she's proceeding. Now, she's not calling it a full-blown, because there are some Democrats who just did skim by in a place that voted for Trump. She's trying to save them, and that's why she's not calling for a vote. She don't have to call for a vote. But that's what they're using now, saying it's not the right procedure. But you can call for a vote, or she can decide she had the power to call, which is what she did. Now, to actually do the impeachment, she'd have to call for the vote. She just asked for inquiry. So a lot of people don't know that. But anyway, right now, I think people are ready to get involved, feeling the need to. And I think the beloved community is seeing more students getting involved and figuring out how they can get involved.
With the anniversary coming up of the massacre, it's going to be the 40-year anniversary here in November. What is one statement you would like to leave the younger generation that will watch this? What would you want them to know or to do in the future?
Get involved. And one way to get involved here in Greensboro, if you're a student and don't know what's going on in Greensboro and how do I get involved, the first place I would come to on Wednesday at this church, the Beloved Community, which is housed upstairs, have a round table at 12 o'clock. It's 12 o'clock, you can bring your lunch and eat your lunch. But if you have a problem that you want to get involved, bring that and share that. But if you're just a student and want to know what's going on, come sit. There's people will bring what's going on, what's happening. You can get involved with that. One of the things happening now was Marcus Smith and how the police hogtied him. The chief lied about it, not got no mistake. He lied and said the man just died. He wouldn't tell them about hog tie anyway. And that's what the coroner said, he died from being hog tied. And other things was in there too. But if he hadn't been hog tied, he wouldn't have died. And they call it a homicide. And right now they've been pushing for that. The black and white people, Hispanics all go up to city council talking about firing the chief. Well, he finally said he's retiring the 31st of January. So he see the handwriting on the wall. But students can get involved in that. None of them can support the people in the city council. I mean, just stand and listen. Once you start that, you can get involved. And then study, find out what's happening, ask questions, do critical thinking. Don't follow just not even what I say. Check stuff out for yourself and think, because there's a lot of stuff out there. If you don't know the Second Amendment, learn that. So you explain that to people, but actually get involved, find out what's going on, and take it from there. Once you get involved, it leads you to more and more and how to do and how to get other people involved. Go vote, because this is going to make a difference.
I've got a question. We've got about 8 minutes left, but what are kind of those moments in Greensboro's history that you've experienced that you feel are kind of untold or just washed over?
The student movement. They do parts of it. Let me tell you, A&T was a leader of the civil rights movement for the youth and the students. If A&T came out, if Central didn't even know what was going on, they came out too. Winston-Salem came out. Grambling, they had to put A&T down. Like I told you, if A&T found out like this Marcus Smith, they would have the city council full, all in the hallway. The fire people would be there because of the crowd. Anything happened in the city, A&T supported it through their bodies. And in the 70s, early 70s, A&T was snowed with heroin. FBI put people on campus with that. So you had a fighting machine. They got involved. People like Stokely Carmichael and all of them came and spoke. When I was there, we had people come and we always would discuss what's going on and this, and you spoke, well, what should the A&T students do? How should we get involved in that? It was always how to do. That's what was happening, and A&T led that. And that, I worked for Drug Action Council for a while. There was 21 students as clients hooked on heroin that we had to help try to get off. I remember going to A&T to the student union, the one that they took down and put a new one up. And I cried because under one of the stairways was a student tied all up cooking heroin in a spoon, shooting it in right there, and it looked at it, and it's like, oh my God. So you know the FBI, the student movement that can move students to move. Oh, and incidentally, I need to, they was black students, but Guilford College, some students, progressive students from UNCG would try to deal. So students was moving into that. So you got a student lead like that and white people trying to figure out how to get involved in that too. That's dangerous for a system. So they put that down, and that's one thing that I wish they would know that history and how that happened. Because I was working with the Drug X Council at the time and could see that happen. So when the students came from under that community student body relations was broken. The leadership of fighting was broken. Students was talking about getting big jobs, big houses, and big cars, and what would get them to do. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we did that too. But we also talked about making the world better and how we can get involved. That part was missing when A&T got from under the drugs.
6 minutes.
Quick question. One of the key takeaways I've gotten from this interview with you is you started out that you used to hate all white people until later on, through your different experiences, you realized that it wasn't necessarily race. One race was the problem, it was classism. And you talked about how the CWP helped, say, hey, if we all come together, we're all cogs in the clock, basically. If we stop, they can't do what they're trying to do at the top. So one thing that I wanted to ask is, with integration, do you think they were so afraid of integration? Was it because of the possibility of race mixing and just integration as a whole, or do you think they were afraid of it because of the fact that they knew if everybody got together and was on the same page, that we could take down the people at the top?
All of that. One of the things they needed, when a few people rule a country, they have to have the people divided. And it can be divided by race. White people, you're better. You got white privilege, black people, this is your place. Okay, you white, you're thinking about your privilege. You don't think about what they got and what they're doing too much, because you got a little bit. Okay, black people trying to fight you because you own them. You got a division. You can rule, even though you the top people are the smallest. So you wonder how, and I say a few people, there's hundreds of thousands of people, but how can they, millions and millions of people, how can they rule? That's how they do it. So integration helped that. Giving you white privilege better, they won't equal nothing, because what are they going to have to keep you divided? That's yeah. The question is that, both of them. They don't want you to get together and see how you can make things better. They want to keep you feeling that you're better than somebody else, that you'll hold on to that and not join somebody else who is lower than you, because you don't have to. You got a little bit of privilege. But meanwhile, you don't have all what you could have if you got together with people.
One other question, me and Tria, we were walking around prior to the interview, and we were talking about gentrification of black neighborhoods, kind of like what they've done around here in this area, where some big company or someone with a lot of money will come into predominantly black neighborhoods or predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods that are pretty cheap to live in based off the demographics, try to buy up, tear down homes, build things up, and overprice them. What do you think about gentrification within the area, around these areas that were kind of a part of the area that the massacre occurred in?
A lot of times they want those places, and then when things get so bad, that help people rise up. So you do some things too to keep that so you can say things a little bit better. Like I told you now, the way students had to deal with when I came here is much worse. So you wanted to make changes, but then students now, they got really nice, you see A&T and student union, and they can do things and all of that. So the urgent to struggle is not sharp. So you do stuff like that. And gentrification, they want this area back. It was completely white, then the whites left and went out. Now they're coming back. They want us gone. They want us gone from this church. And they can't do anything yet with it. But, I mean, we probably could sell it for $1 million, this area in here. But this is right where we need to be at and what we are dealing with. But the thing about making America white again, they can forget that. You can go to Walmarts and see white women with mixed babies and black women with mixed babies and all of that. So the mix is going to be the predominant, and nothing that Trump can do. He even talked about sending some of us here legally back. I don't know who he's talking about. I'm here legally because I was born here, but he didn't make no stipulation. He said he may send some people who legal. He ain't talking about no white people he's sending legally. But anyway, they can forget that, and let's fight for a good country with everybody equal, have a good life, and defeat those that's really living half the hog.
Well, we want to thank you so much for taking this time to sit with us and to share your wisdom and your experiences, and for us to be able to capture it on film for generations to come to be able to see. We really, really appreciate that.
Okay.
And we appreciate everything that you've done for not only the community, but for just the human race in general.
Well, to me, I would tell young people, you don't have a free ride. That's another to answer the question. You have an obligation to do something to this world and make it better before you move on to another life or before you die. You have an obligation not to come and just protect, but make it better, whatever way you can. That's an obligation, not a right.
Thank you so much.
Let me ask you this. Can I talk?
Yeah.